Good day, YouTube. Moparmodeler here. This is the second time I've started a video for part 5. I decided rather than to actually show you physically clearing the body, I just went ahead and cleared the body without making a video. Clearing the body is the same as painting it, so I figured that was something we didn't want to get into. So I will show you the body, what it looks like when it's cleared, and then the product I use to polish out the clear coat. So I hope you enjoy part 5, and it gives you some ideas and pointers on how to, clear coat and how to polish out, because I will talk a little bit about what I did before I clear coated it. So before I get started on how I prep the body for clear, I'll just show you what kind of clear I use. I like to use an automotive clear. This is a very inexpensive brand. I believe you can get this at most auto parts store, but it's Duplicolor. It's a gloss clear coat, and it says that it's a ready to spray lacquer. So it's a lacquer clear coat. Well, when they say ready to spray, they're thinking that you're going to use an automotive spray gun. But using a hobby spray gun, you have to dilute it. And I dilute it pretty much the same way as I do paints. 50-50. One of the reasons why I go 50-50 is that, I don't want it too thick. And if it's too thick or your pressure's too high on the airbrush, you get spider webs. It's really weird, and hopefully that doesn't happen to me today, but if it does, you'll get to see that in action. A lot of times too, I will go with a larger airbrush, a 0.5 rather than a 0.3, because that way there's less opportunity for the clear to spiderweb coming out of the gun. So I have found that I like to have my clear coat rather runny instead of thicker, so that it doesn't do that spider webbing. And also I like to paint the clear on the spoon that I put my paint on earlier. And the reason for this is this way I can see how the clear will react to this paint. Now, even though I'm pretty sure it will be fine and I'll have no problems, it never fails. The moment your confidence is way high and you start skipping steps, things mess up. So I'm going to paint this spoon, or clear coat this spoon, not only on the bad side where I touched it with my arm, but I'm going to do the inside and see how the clear comes out. I like to make a note real quick. The spoon was white, and I didn't primer it, and so the paint has come out this bright yellowish color, but it does have a light green tint to it because it's a color shift paint. But when we look at the body that I painted, see here, you get to see the body for the first time after painted. There is a difference in the color, and it's because the body was blue, and I didn't primer it. If I would have primered it a gray, it would have came out even a darker color. If I would have primered it a white, it would have came out more like. Now here, this is the mask I use, and I actually, I didn't use it earlier because it's hard to talk whenever I spray paint with a mask on, because I'm using this lacquer style clear coat. I really don't want to breathe it in. So I'm going to be wearing this, and I want to have my spray booth on, and it's going to be quite loud. So I might just Spirian mask. It's a professional mask. In fact, each filter is $20 a piece usually. So for 2 filters, it's $40 just to replace these filters. And you may be asking why I have such an expensive mask. You don't have to have an expensive mask. I have this because this is the mask that I used when I worked for Valspar, when I actually, made paint. and this is what I used. And normally you change these filters out quite regularly. These are from 2015, so if I was still at work, these would have been changed out, to be honest with you, in 2015. But you can see there's hardly any damage to them or anything. So for hobby spraying and not wearing them a lot, you know, because I don't paint a lot now, you know, these work fine. And all right, now how I prep the body is I'm going to take it off of this. My hands are really dry and they're really clean. There's no oil on them. You can wear gloves when you do this just to keep from getting oil. But I like to take a towel, and this is a craft acrylic. You have to remember this. So I like to take a towel, and I only do this with craft acrylic. I do not do this with an enamel or a lacquer. But I like to just, with a dry towel again, lightly rub the paint, you know, and it still feels coarse, but it's not as coarse. I don't want to put any kind of product on it, because if I do, it will literally strip this paint off. I mean, I don't even want to put water, because water will take off some of the paint, you know, because it is honestly a craft acrylic, and this is just its plain basic coat, so it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't have really any kind of protectant on it. So I like to rub it, and you can see as I rub it, it gets a little shinier. You know, that's just simply because I'm taking that loose, dull paint off, even though it's not shown on the rag. It really does help. You know, sometimes you can put a little, just dampen the cloth a little bit, but you don't want it to, you don't want to mess up the paint. And I'm afraid to risk it. Never do this with alcohol or anything. I mean, if you want to get it smoother, we can I'll try just a little bit of windshield washer. Well, I got tap water. Let me use water, because the windshield washer fluid has alcohol and soap in it, and I want to avoid that. So this is just plain water. It's tap water. I rather have distilled water, but I don't. My distilled water thing is empty. Distilled water is only like 50 cents a gallon or 60 cents a gallon at most grocery stores. So just a little bit of water, and I want to kind of test a spot here. See, so it's not coming off with just the water. The only problem with using water too is that, you know, when it dries, it leaves a film on it. But so I'm just going to cut the video here, and I want to rub the rest of the body. I think you have the whole idea of what we're doing. So here is the Coronet after it's been cleared. It actually looks pretty good. It's really shiny. It'd be shinier with different light, and probably come out better once the back side is you know, colored in, so it doesn't, you know, shine through, you know. But one thing I did is I went ahead and put on some of the decals and clear coated over them so that they won't peel or come up. They're on there for good. Now the products I like to use, and it depends. Sometimes I use them in a combination. Sometimes I just use one. Depends on how things look. Depends how aggressive things are. So this is scratch out made by Kit. This is an older bottle. The newer bottles have a spout like this, a cap like this, where you can just pop it up. This one doesn't have, so this is actually pretty old. I don't know how old this is. This I use for heavy scratches. It doesn't, you know, it'll take out a haze and everything. It doesn't wax anything, but it does polish, and you don't need a whole lot of this. Just a little bit will go a long way. And so a lot of times, like with this project, there's a few blemishes. I will start out with this, and then I will go to Mother's which is another scratch remover, but it's not as harsh or not as, how can I put it, gritty as the Scratch Out. It's finer, and it's kind of like sanding things, you know. It tends to take stuff out. So I'll use this, and it helps clean, and all. It, again, we'll only be using like drops of this stuff. You don't need a whole bunch. The more you put on, the more problems you have. You just put little bits on there and just work it with a soft cloth. And then usually my last thing I do is Meguiar's Plastics. This is for polishing headlights, plastic headlights on your cars, and it does have a polish, and it's a cleaner. So it's not a scratch remover, it's a cleaner and a polish. And it says it removes fine scratches, but this is almost has no grit to it whatsoever. So, you know, as a third stage, I like to use this. And then when I'm done, I have a Meguiar's or a Mother's spray wax that I spray into a microfiber cloth, and then I just rub over it really good to get whatever residue is on there from these various products. And I'm not going to show the whole procedure, but I'll show you just a little bit of polishing on the roof. Now when I polish, I like to use, you know, what I've been using all along is these little, I guess you can call them diapers, but they're all 100% cotton cloths, you know, and I rewash these so I can use them over again. But they're made by Autocraft. I think these came from Advanced Auto. I'm not for sure. So let me get set up here, and I will do a little bit of polishing on the roof, and you can see the difference. Alright, I have a little camera readjusting here so we can see more of the project. As you can see, it is shiny. You know, I can't, as far as a reflection on there, there is some. It's just, it's hard to see on this camera. I'm hopefully, after polishing it, you'll be able to see the numbers on the ruler better. If not, it's no big deal. But how I start off with is I have a little bowl here with some windshield washer fluid in it, because I guess you can use your spit, but we'll use windshield washer fluid. And then I have the Scratch Out opened. First I'll take my do the old shoe polish trick with the rag, and you can't see, it's off camera, but I'm soaking it with the windshield washer fluid, so it's damp. I don't need a lot of this, and this is really old. I probably should be using a newer bottle, but I'll just put a little bit on there. Okay, so I have just a little bit, not a whole lot. And we're going to start on the roof. You have to bear with me. I'm not used to doing this with a camera in front of me. But this is a little gritty, but not a whole lot. I'm just going to lightly, you don't need to put pressure on it, just lightly go over it. And I like to go until it starts to dry out a little bit. You can go with a little thicker mixture. Sometimes I will use a Q-tip to get some of the product out and just stick on there rather than on the... Just a light rubbing on it. It's amazing what just a little of this will do, you know. And it's not taking any paint off. There's no coloring on my rag because it's already been cleared. I'm just going to polish away here, and every now and then I'll stop and I'll just take the back side of my towel here, and again very lightly just go over it. And the thing about these cotton cloths is that they're so soft that it really doesn't, you know, add scratches. And to me, I don't see much of a difference. You know, it's still showing a lot of grit, I'm thinking that my scratch out might be a little too old, so I'm putting more chunky stuff on there. Okay, you don't need to re-wet your cloth. Okay, here we go. This is a little thicker. Some people like to use sandpaper. I don't, because I tend to burn through the paint and everything when sanding, trying to polish. So I'd rather use something like this and just go lightly. Well, I'm going to finish up with this, and then I'll come back with the second stage. Okay, I've only polished the roof. I'm just going to do the roof on video. I'll do the rest of the car separate. But I finished the first stage of the scratch out, and I still got the next two stages, but I want to show you, although it's not as shiny as I want, you can see the reflection of the numbers barely in the paint. Now, it may get better than this, it may not. I could have probably gone ahead and put more clear coat on there to make it super deep, but I have a feeling that this metallic is kind of going to keep me from getting that deep look. But at least I can try to smooth this up enough and wax it enough to where it has that wet look. So the next product is the Mother's. It's also a scratch remover. It has a little spout here which loves to get plugged up, so a lot of times you have to run something in there to undo it, like I use a Q-tip stick. I'm just going to go ahead and try to put just a drop, see that? Now, I didn't bother switching places on the rag. You don't have to. But if you do, you know, that's fine. So here's the rag. It's a fresh spot. I want to wet it just a little bit. So wet it with a little windshield washer fluid. And then also, because you're rubbing it, you're creating friction, and it tends to build up static, and you do get dust. And so you want to try to make sure there's no dust on there when you polish it, because it just adds scratches. You know, you're putting an abrasive on there. And I always like to look at my rag to make sure I'm not taking off paint. So I'm going to work it with this. Sometimes it takes, you know, several minutes. Sometimes it's just right away. But I will come back when I start to do stage 3. Okay, so I just finished the second step using Mother's. As you can tell, it does look a little shinier than what it did before. We'll do the old reflection test. And, you know, there is a difference. It's hard to tell on camera, but it is showing a good reflection there of the numbers. You know, but not as good as it could be. So next I'm going to use this Meguiar's Plastics, and I'm going to do the same exact process. So I'll come back after I'm done using this. Alright, I finished with the third product here, and you know, you can see the reflection. It's just hard to catch it on this camera. I'm not quite seeing the numbers reflected in there very well, but let me get the decal sheet that's left over. Maybe that'll help. Okay, so here's the decal sheet. You definitely can see my camera in the background, and you can also see, you know, the shape of the decal sheet and things, the reflection in there. So that's actually pretty good, and it came out better than I thought. Another thing to note is when I I haven't done the trunk, and you can see the difference in how well, maybe you can't, but when I rub my thumb over this, it's a little gritty. I can feel a little grit. When I rub it over here, it is smooth. I don't feel anything on there. It's nice and slick, and that's what you want. I have one more step that I do, and this step is something that even when I go to shows, before I put it on the table, I can go over and over again. Bear with me and let me get the last step I do to make it look good. Okay, the last step is I use a spray on as you dry wax, or this is made by Eagle One. I like to say that I'm not trying to advertise for any of these products. This is just what I use. As far as a spray wax, there are many different types. Look to see what you already have at home before you go buy specifically what I have. You don't have to use all 3 different compounds. You can, just pick one and go with that. I would say if you was going to do so, maybe something with a polish in it like this. I just find that the scratch remover ones, you can even go with just a one scratch remover and a cleaner polish and then a wax. I just like to go with 2 different scratch removers because I like the difference in the grit, and it just seems to take quicker when I use this a heavier grit in the beginning and then work down to this. So anyway, I'll be back. All I do is I take my rag here, and I want to find, sometimes I switch to a clean rag. So I move this to where I don't have anything on it. I don't spray this really on the body. I found that when you spray on the body, you just end up wiping it off. So I just spray it on the rag and let it soak in there a bit. Let it soak in there like so. And then I ball it up. I don't do the finger thing. I ball it up and take the damp part, and I just rub over the top. And you can see it beating up because the paint is so smooth that there's not a lot of places for the wax to go. But what this does is whatever residue I have from the polishing compounds, it removes, because it will dry and look like chalk on the body. And I just do this, and this isn't polishing or anything. This is just kind of putting a nice little glaze on there. And then I come back with a microfiber cloth. You have 2 sides to the microfiber cloth. You have the really fluffy and the not so fluffy. I like to use the not so fluffy, and I just basically lightly rub over it until it dries off. This actually is the part that smells good. I just whacked you guys in the nose. I hope you don't have a bloody nose. And well, I'm just hitting you guys in the face quite a bit. So there we go. It doesn't look dry, but it's dry. I done wiped all that off. Has that really deep wet look. Let me get these decals now. So here we go. That's the reflection of the decal sheet. And maybe if I get closer to the camera, you can actually read some of the stuff on there. It's hard to get that positioning right. But so that's how I polish the paint. And I don't know if I put the hood on, maybe you can see the difference in the way it does shine. There's definitely a difference whether you can see it on the camera or not. But that's just how I get the bodies polished out and shiny and all that. You can spend a lot more time and put a lot more effort. You can put a lot more clear coat on there, but I kind of like to not have too much clear coat because I like to see the details of the model instead of washing them out with paint and washing them out with clear. So my friends, this concludes part 5 of this Coronet build. Next, I'm going to work on the motor. I'm going to take a break from painting because there's still painting to do on the interior. So, with that, I hope you've found this interesting and you have found some of these tips valuable. Remember, it's just a hobby. Enjoy it, and good day.